Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Fine? Alright. Now, what are sentence fragments? Fragment is a fragment, piece, a part of something bigger. So, part of a sentence is a sentence fragment. A sentence is a full entity. A part of that is a fragment of a sentence. Clear? A sentence fragment is a part of a sentence punctuated as if it were a complete sentence. So its punctuation mark is given as if it were a complete sentence. It starts with a capital letter. It gives requisite commas wherever they are supposed to be given, and it gives a full stop at the end. But it does not make complete sense. The identifying part, the identifying feature of recognizing a sentence fragment is that it does not make complete sense. But it looks like a complete sentence. It is punctuated also like a complete sentence, but it does not make complete sense. It begins with a capital letter and ends with a period or an exclamation mark or a question mark. Fair enough. Now, what happens is, sentence fragments, they can occur anywhere in a sentence or in a paragraph, or you are writing something. You may write sentence fragments without your knowing. But you have to be aware that you do not write sentence fragments. Sentence fragments are much used in colloquial language. When you speak, in films, movies, screenplays, most of the dialogues are sentence fragments. But in writing, formal writing, academic writing, or fiction writing, you should write a full complete sentence which makes a complete sense. It has to begin with a capital letter, it has to end with a full stop or a period, and it has to make complete sense. And it has to be punctuated appropriately so that it does not become a fused on sentence, a run on sentence. There are no comma splices, and it has to make complete sense. They can be, sentence fragment may be separated, classified, categorized into two parts, phrases and clauses. Now, phrases are a group of words, two or more words. More words is a phrase. Now, a phrase can also become a sentence fragment. How is that possible? Let us say if it has no subject, if there is no subject. Subject, verb, object, that is the order that it follows. It has a verb, it has an object, but it doesn't have a subject. A verb and an object is also known as a predicate. Subject, verb, object, subject, predicate. A sentence may be divided into subject and a predicate, where a predicate may be denoted as having a verb and an object. The most important part of a subject is a verb. The most important part of a sentence is a verb. Without a verb, you cannot make a sentence. So there must be a verb. But in a sentence fragment, the first kind is there is no subject. For example, swam into the sea. He swam into the sea. He is not written. We are just writing swam into the sea. We think the reader will understand it is he. So he is implied. But good writing does not necessarily imply everything. You must state what you want the reader to understand. What you are understanding, you must transmit that same understanding to the reader by your words. By implication, yes, it can be, like for imperative sentences. Swim into the sea. It's an imperative sentence, a command. I say a command, swim into the sea. So I'm implying the subject, you. You swim into the sea. So I don't have to write, you swim into the sea. You, the subject, is implied. It's an imperative sentence, swim into the sea. Command. That is not a sentence fragment. That's a complete sentence, having a complete sense, because the subject is implied. That's an imperative sentence. Swim. An imperative sentence, just one word sentence, a verb, swim. Subject is implied. Object is implied. Where will you swim? In some water body. It may be a sea, it may be a lake, it may be a swimming pool, it may be anything. But swim. So, that is a complete sentence. It's not a sentence fragment. One word sentence where the verb, imperative sentence, complete sentence, not a sentence fragment. But here, if there is no subject, let us say swam into the sea. It is no subject. Who will swim into the sea? You, me, I, he, they, we, she, who? So it's not clear. So no subject is a sentence fragment. One way of examining it is by examining the phrase. These are just clues. These are not hard and fast rules. There are no hard and fast rules here. It just helps to identify sentence fragments. These are just clues, they're just hints, so that you can identify sentence fragments. There are no hard and fast rules that if it does not have a subject, then it is a sentence fragment. No, in an imperative sentence, there is no subject. The subject is implied, but that does not mean that it is a sentence fragment. No. So there are no hard and fast rules. These are just hints, clues. Now second is no verb. No verb. So without a verb, a sentence cannot be formed at all. A sentence needs a verb. The most important part of a sentence is a verb. But here we have no verb. The example we stated is the black metal chair. Where is the verb here? Black is an adjective. The definite article. Metal, noun. Chair, noun. So there is no subject. Sorry, there is no verb. So no verb in a phrase, the black metal chair. We are talking, I'm saying, why don't you sit in that chair? You ask me which chair. So I say the black metal chair. Makes sense? In a dialogue, it makes sense. Why don't you sit in that chair? Which chair? The black metal chair. Makes complete sense. But it is a dialogue. So that is why in screenplays you find most of the dialogues are sentence fragments. But here, if you look at the sentence, there is no verb. It's a phrase, it's a group of words, the black metal chair, but without any verb. It does not have a complete sense. So it's a sentence fragment. Next is no subject, no predicate. A sentence should have a subject and a predicate. SV order. Sentence should have a subject and a predicate. Here it doesn't have a subject, it doesn't have a predicate. So it is not a sentence. It is not a sentence. It is a part of a sentence. Because it is not a sentence, it is a part of a sentence, and thus it is a sentence fragment. So there is no subject, there is no predicate. The example is, as in the lives of many, something continues. It's a fragment. As in the lives of many, such and such things happen. Okay, let's move on. Now, second is dependent clause. We have clauses. Clauses can also be identified as sentence fragments. Clauses, again, these are all hints. These are all just clues. These help you to find a sentence fragment. There are no hard and fast rules. Let us say clauses can be divided in two parts, a dependent clause and a relative pronoun. Beginning. beginning. Rather, it should be the sentence begins. Beginning. Beginning with a relative pronoun or a dependent clause or a subordinator. Beginning with a subordinator. Say, dependent clause, say subordinator. Subordinator. So the sentence begins with a subordinator. Now what is a dependent clause? It is an independent clause prior to which a subordinator is placed, which makes it a dependent clause. Any independent clause, if you put a subordinator prior to it, then it becomes a dependent clause. See, like here, for example, the exam is over. The example is the exam is over. Are you following me? Yes? The exam, okay, can you see now? The exam is over. Right? Good. The exam or the exam? The exam, yes. If it comes prior to a vowel or a sound of a vowel, it becomes the. And you fuse the sound. The exam. Don't say the exam. No separation. The exam. The exam is over. Makes complete sense. Independent clause. Now, I add a subordinator until, prior to it. So it becomes a dependent clause. Until the exam is over, then something is more. There's no complete sense. Something needs to be more. Something will happen probably. So, no complete sense. So if you see in the beginning of a sentence there is a subordinator, then check out for sentence fragments. There's a more likelihood that it might be a sentence fragment. It may be a complex compound sentence, you never know. But generally, chances are more. And these are all hints. These are all clues. There are no hard and fast rules. Now, let us say the subordinators like until, after, until, after, before, however, while, because, since, though, although, if, so that, so, where. These are the subordinators. There are many subordinators more. However, moreover, nevertheless. Then adverbs like consequently, subsequently. So they are all subordinators. They make an independent clause into a dependent clause. So if a sentence starts with a subordinator, then most likely it may be a sentence fragment. It is not necessary that it will be a sentence fragment, but it may be. Chances are more. The probability is more. Now the similar probability which is with a relative pronoun. A pronoun, relative, so it becomes a relative pronoun. Chances are more. Like that. You start a sentence with that. Which chair? That chair. Sit in the chair. I tell you, sit in the chair. You ask me which chair? So I say that chair. So I am just saying that chair. It is starting with that chair. So most probably it is a fragment, sentence fragment. That, who, whose, whom, which, where. The example is whom she knew since her childhood. Whom she knew since her childhood. Who was that person she was talking to? Do you know him? So you answer, she knows him. So I say, how does she know him? Then you answer, whom she knew since her childhood. Or she knew him since her childhood. Something like that. It has to fit in the context of the. Contextually, you can put this and it makes sense. Any sentence starting with that, who, whose, whom, which, when. But if it is a drama, if it is a screenplay, if it is a movie, if it is a dialogue, not prosaic, not poetry. Yeah, in poetry also sometimes fragments are used, sentence fragments are used in poetry to telling effect. But they are still fragments. So while writing proper English, good English, writing well, we avoid sentence fragments. Clear? It's very simple. Let's move on. Okay. So, yes. Yeah. Whom she knew since her childhood. She knows someone since her childhood and she's met him, say after a long time. And someone tells him that, who is she? So she says she knew her since her childhood. Whom she knew since her childhood. It's just a fragment. It looks like a complete sentence. It starts with a capital letter, it ends with a period. And it looks like a complete sentence, but it has no meaning. Complete meaning. It has some meaning, obviously. A fragmented meaning. Okay, we move on. Right.